الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه يكافئ مزيدا. يا ربنا لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك ولعظيم سلطانك. سبحانك لا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك. فلك الحمد حتى ترضى ولك الحمد إذا رضيت ولك الحمد بعد الرضا. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في كل وقت وحين وصلي وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى ليوم الدين وصلي وسلم على سيدنا محمد حتى ترث الأرض ومن عليها أنت خير وارثين. نويت تعلم وتعليم وتذكر وتذكير نفع انتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على تماسك بكتاب الله وبسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. قال إمام شمس الدين أبو فتح محمد بن أحمد بن سيد الناس اليعمري الربعي رضي الله تعالى عنه ونفعنا به وبكم في الدارين آمين في كتابه نور العيون في تلخيص سيرة الأمين المأمون في باب مغازيه صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. وكانت غزواته صلى الله عليه وسلم في هذه المدة 25 وقيل 27. قاتل منها في 7 بدر وأحد وخندق وبني قريظة وبني المصطلق وخيبر وحنين وطائف. وقيل قاتل أيضا بوادي القرى والغابة وبني النضير. بعوثه صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. وكانت بعوثه صلى الله عليه وصحبه وسلم نحو من 50. حجه صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. وحج صلى الله عليه وصحبه وسلم بعد فرض الحج حجة واحدة وقبل ذلك مرتين. وخرج صلى الله عليه وصحبه وسلم في حجة الوداع نهارا بعد أن تهجل وادهن وتطيب فبات بذي الحليفة. وقال صلى الله عليه وصحبه وسلم أتاني ليلة آت من ربي فقال صل في هذا الوادي المبارك وقل عمرة في حجة فأحرم بهما قارنا. ودخل صلى الله عليه وسلم مكة يوم الأحد بكرة من كداء من ثنية العليا. وطاف للقدوم فرمل 3 ومشى 4 ثم خرج إلى الصفا فسعى راكبا. ثم أمر من لم يسق الحج بفسخ الحج إلى العمرة ونزل بها على الحجون. فلما كان يوم التروية توجه صلى الله عليه وصحبه وسلم إلى منى وصلى بها الظهر والعصر والمغرب والعشاء وبات بهما وصلى بها الصبح. فلما طلعت الشمس سار إلى عرفة ودربت قبته صلى الله عليه وصحبه وسلم بالنميرة فقام بها حتى زالت الشمس فخطب الناس وصلى بهم الظهر والعصر بأذان وإقامتين. ثم راح إلى الموقف فلم يزل يدعو ويهلل ويكبر حتى زاغت الشمس. ثم دفع إلى المزدلفة بعد الغروب وبات بها وصلى الصبح. ثم وقف بالمشعر الحرام حتى أسفر. ثم دفع صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم قبل طلوع الشمس إلى منى فرمى جمرة العقبة ب7 حصيات. وفي 3 أيام من التشريك كان يرمي في كل يوم منها الجمرات 3 ماشيا ب7 يبدأ بالتي تلي الخيف ثم بالوسطى ثم بجمرة العقبة ثم ويطيل الدعاء عند الأولى والثانية. ونحر صلى الله عليه وصحبه وسلم يوم نزوله منى وأفاض إلى البيت فطاف بها 7 ثم أتى السقاية فاستسقى ثم رجع إلى منى ثم نثر في اليوم الثالث فنزل محصبا وأعمر عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها من التنعيم ثم أمر بالرحيل ثم طاف للوداع وتوجه إلى المدينة. وأما عمره صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم ف4 كلها في ذي القعدة. Praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us to gather in strange times, and we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lifts sometimes from us and protects us inshallah ta'ala from the perils of the age Jalla Jalaluhu wa ta'ala azamatuh. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala connects us to his beloved sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, especially inside of this month in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to bring forth his beloved sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Just like this month is a month in which the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam manifests inside of creation, i.e. inside the lower creation of earth, the month in which he's born, sallallahu alayhi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And likewise, we also look likewise in the second birth, the rebirth of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which is his birth inside of Mecca al-Mukarramah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was inside of the cave of Hira, Ghar Hira sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Likewise, also when we arrived at looking at the work of the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala ibn Sayyid al-Nas, is likewise another birth of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam inside of the blessed land of Medina to Munawwara. Right, inside of this blessed month that the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam arrives inside of a land that is extremely blessed, and according to some, like the great Imam of Dhar al-Hijrah, of the land of migration, the land of Medina, in and of itself, Imam Malik is the greatest of all of the lands of Allah Jalla Jalaluh wa Ta'ala Azamatuh. But in the same way, from a perspective that Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, as you see in the dua of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who sanctified Mecca, then it's our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam who sanctified Medina. And in the dua of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what he sought from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was twice the sanctification of Mecca al-Mukarramah, twice the sanctification. But likewise also we gaze at the fact that the sanctifier of Mecca is Ibrahim alayhi salam, who's the second greatest of all of the prophets and messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereas Medina is sanctified by Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, wa shatana ma baynahuma, and there's a great difference. With adab to Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, there's a great difference between Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam and our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And the wisdoms dictate that the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala ibn Sayyid al-Nas, as we gather inshallah in this blessed month, alhamdulillah, I know that we try to connect to the virtues of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, is that the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala, he has chosen not quote unquote to lay out a timeline for Medina to Munawwara. He's chosen not to discuss all of the salient events quote unquote in chronological order as he did inside of Mecca. He's chosen not to take that approach inside of Medina to Munawwara, the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala. We discussed the Imam's work. Remember, the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala is summarizing his great work, which is called the Uyun al-Athar, the eyes of the tradition of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He summarized it inside of this work, which is called Nur al-Uyun, light of the eyes, summarized. And so these are the most salient points. But the great work and the work that often is referenced as it relates to Ibn Sayyid al-Nas rahimahullah ta'ala is his Uyun al-Athar, the eyes of the tradition. And I'm saying inside of that work, then the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala will now quote unquote, he will unfold the great events inside of Medina to Munawwara in a salient way, even as a timeline, and what happened inside of the first year of Medina, the second year of Medina, the third year of Medina, the fourth year of Medina, etc. And thereby also deal with certain matters inside of Medina to Munawwara in a more detailed fashion. Radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wardahu. Remember, as Muslims, we understand that the narrative of our religion is a narrative of two cities. It's a narrative of two quote-unquote spheres of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Remember, there's a narrative of Mecca and there's a narrative of Medina. And the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the deen of Takamul, a deen in which the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promotes perfection. And it promotes the individual being perfect and seeking perfection and being complete and seeking completion, inwardly and outwardly. But it's important that we become people, inshallah, trying a narrative of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam who know him in Mecca and know the events of Mecca. And likewise, also we know him in Medina and know the events of Medina. Okay? And Mecca has its themes. The theme of Mecca, no doubt, is a theme of faith. The theme of Mecca, no doubt, is a theme of makarim. And we speak now about virtues. And when the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, I've already been sent to complete the virtues of character. The Mecca is paramount in order to understand virtues in the truest sense. As I say, true virtues that they manifest, quote unquote, inside of the furnace of difficulty. And Mecca is difficult. In the Arabic language, when we speak about the narrative of the two cities, Mecca and Medina, they call Mecca Wa'r, and they call Medina Sahl. Mecca Wa'r. Wa'r means difficult. It's a very difficult place in terms of its environment, and it also is a difficulty likewise in terms of its people. And definitely in terms of the narrative of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in Mecca, it's difficulty upon difficulty, upon difficulty for the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam and his companions. You know, the majority of the companions of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the age of Mecca are unable to bear Mecca. They're unable to remain inside of Mecca. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, by the time he makes hijrah from Mecca to Medina to Munawwara, he has asharat min al-sahaba fil Mecca. There are only tens in the tens of companions of the Prophet ﷺ living inside of Mecca, with the remaining companions of the Rasul ﷺ between Abyssinia and between what is now known as Medina to Munawwara. But it gives us a sense of the difficulty of that territory that is known as Mecca. And that's why we heard in our gathering yesterday, the great Imam Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the truthful one, radiallahu ta'ala anhu warda, when he steps beyond the polity of Mecca, now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will destroy you. Okay, I mean, for Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu warda, we often we associate Abu Bakr rahimahullah ta'ala with having a very, very gentle disposition and a very, very soft heart. Abu Bakr rahimahullah ta'ala, to see words of majesty manifest upon the tongue of truth, the tongue of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq about Mecca and about the people of Mecca. Then we understand it was a very, very difficult place for the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. But for us who live in difficult times, the Mecca, mashallah ta'ala, has great meaning. And maybe possibly when we look at the seerah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, in terms of applicability of meaning inside of this twin narrative, that Mecca has a greater significance in our day and age than Medina to Munawwara. Why? Because the age of Mecca, it shows us how to act in difficulty. It shows us how to act in difficult times. It also shows us how to build foundations by virtue of which Medina to Munawwara will be erected upon. Remember, Mecca comes first, Medina comes second. And Medina is built, quote unquote, upon the foundations and edifice of Mecca al-Mukarramah. And it's built upon the foundations of faith. It's built upon the foundation of Makarim al-Akhlaq. Like we see it in the tradition of Sayyidina Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, rahimahullah ta'ala, who shows us dalala al-wa'ri Mecca. He shows us the difficulty of Mecca al-Mukarramah. And it's in Abu Dhar, radiallahu anhu warda, and he's one of those companions of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, who's an army unto himself. He was an army unto himself in Jahiliyyah, and he was an army unto himself inside of Islam. Remember the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he addressing Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, his name is Jundub ibn Junada, radiallahu anhu warda, said, Ya Aba Dhar, sata'ish wahida. You will live alone. You run to yourself. وَسَتَمُوتْ وَحِيدًا, and you will die alone. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told Abu Dhar al-Ghifari. And he literally died alone. Literally died alone. Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, rahimahullah ta'ala, show you the tongue of truth of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and likewise you'll be resurrected alone. How can I say? Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, he cuts a very itinerant and lonely figure. Radiallahu anhu warda, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam informed us, Ashbah bi-Isa ibn Maryam, and he bears a striking resemblance to the son of Mary alayhi salam, saying Abu Dhar al-Ghifari. What we want is that this is a very, very, mashallah, tabarakallah, capable man. And his sort of his seerah, his narrative inside the Jahiliyyah shows you the capacity of Abu Dhar radiallahu anhu warda. And he would raid the encampments of the Arabs, the villages, the settlements of the Arabs by himself, broad daylight. Abu Dhar radiallahu anhu warda. And he cut a very lonely figure, but he cut, quote unquote, a very violent figure as well, saying Abu Dhar rahimahullah ta'ala. And that's his narrative. You see his narrative when he comes to Mecca al-Mukarramah. Abu Dhar is not in Mecca for long. Violence ensues between Abu Dhar and, quote unquote, the leaders of Quraysh. Okay, now when he's going to engage religion, radiallahu anhu warda. But we notice that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam is going to send somebody like Abu Dhar back. Leave Mecca. Leave. Like just leave. I mean, Mecca is not going to be safe for you. And when Mecca is not safe for the likes of Abu Dhar, who's a man of capacity, then who is Mecca safe for? And who is Mecca safe for? Abu Dhar rahimahullah ta'ala, when he first hears of the manifestation of the Rasul inside of Mecca, and Abu Dhar, although he was a very violent, quote unquote, thuggish type of individual inside of Jahiliyyah, his heart had a purity to it. And that's why you see that there could be people, quote unquote, who are extremely rough in terms of their exterior. And they can be extremely rough in terms of their mannerisms and their interaction and their conduct with others. But that doesn't necessarily negate a purity of heart. And it doesn't necessarily negate quote-unquote a connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the likes of Abu Dhar in that regard amongst the Sahaba, kathir minhum, radiyallahu anhum wardahum. Like the Sahaba, for want of a better phrase, they're like rough, uncut diamonds. Radiyallahu anhu wardah. And the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in the narrative of duality, some of them he will cut and polish. But others, he leaves it just the way it is. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And so now Abu Dhar rahimahullah ta'ala, who was somebody who inclined towards Tawheed, it would be correct to call Abu Dhar a Hanif. A Hanif inside of Jahiliyyah, despite quote his outward appearance. And he, radiallahu anhu wardah, will give you his own narrative. But now Abu Dhar al-Khifari rahimahullah ta'ala, when he hears about the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, he has a brother called Unais, who's just like him, to be very, very honest. And so now he wants Unais to go onto Mecca al-Mukarramah and now to find out about the one who claims prophecy, about the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so Abu Dhar says, I take care of what? Of the animals, the sheep, they had sheep, and you go and find out and bring me the news. And so Unais now, he returns back from Mecca al-Mukarramah and he informs Abu Dhar about what the Prophet ﷺ is calling unto. And so he calls unto three things. Two of them, this is the rubric of faith. And he's calling unto what? The oneness of God, Tawheed, that there is no deity but Allah. And that's a negation of shirk, a negation of idols. Look, we get that, because they already had that. Unais and Abu Dhar, I said, they were Hunafa who believed in the one God, Jalla Jalaluhu wa Ta'ala, and don't quote unquote worship idols. What else does he call to? He calls to the fact that he's the messenger of God. And he says that he has been sent on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Bashiran wa Nadhira, bringing glad tidings and the bearer of dire warnings, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. What else does he call to? He calls to Makarim al-Akhlaq. He calls to the virtues of character. Virtues of character. Now Abu Dhar radiallahu anhu wardah, he said, Laysh fil ghayr, that don't suffice me. And he details. And so Abu Dhar radiallahu anhu wardah, uthbut ma'al ghanam. You remain with the sheep. That's when Abu Dhar himself now emerges in Mecca, and what the narrative is, a narrative radiallahu anhu wardah. But that, now you see themes of Mecca. Themes. You see a theme of Tawheed. You see a theme, likewise, of Risala, of Nubuwwah, of prophecy. And likewise, you also see a theme of Makarim, Akhlaq, the virtues of character that the Rasul was sent to complete and completed, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. That's very, very important for all of us. When we ask ourselves, Kayfa anta ma'allah? How are you with Allah Jalla Jalaluhu wa Ta'ala? How are you with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And Kayfa anta ma'a Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam? How are you with the Messenger of Allah himself sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam? Wa kayfa anta ma'a makarim? And how are you with these sort of honorable, these noble, these virtues of character that you see manifest inside of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam? Kayfa anta? These are the three. I remember saying Aisha radiallahu anha wardaha, who stresses ta'allamna al-iman thumma ta'allamna al-Quran fazidna al-imana. Hakada she says, we first learned faith, and she's speaking Mecca, the reality of Mecca. Thumma ta'allamna al-Quran, then we learned Quran. Quran, she means that's the theme of Medina. She means by that the law. And the law is virtually exclusively a Medina reality. It's not Mecca, it's Medina. Then we learned the law for zidna al-imana, and it served to increase us in faith. She said, and had we learned law, Quran, before faith, lakafarna. She said, we would have disbelieved. Enter the houses through their doorways. This is a religion of priorities. Mecca comes before Medina. But we arrive at Medina to Munawwara, and the themes differ inside of Medina. The theme of Medina to Munawwara, Medina is a theme of law. Law now, Sharia. It's a virtually exclusively all law, all major law, with the exception of the notable and higher reality of prayer, is a Medini phenomenon. With the exception of prayer, law is a Medini phenomenon. And so Medina has a theme of law. And law, by virtue of revelation of law, you can create a timeline of Medina to Munawwara. What legal rulings that came from beyond seven heavens from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were revealed to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam in what particular year in chronological order inside of Medina. Likewise, also Medina is a theme of war. And that's where the Imam Rahimahullah Ta'ala wants to begin. It's a theme of war. Every single war of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, whether he partook in that war or whether he sanctioned that war Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, is a Medini phenomenon. It's not a theme of Mecca, but it's a theme of Medina, the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And it's certainly thematic. And usually this is the way that the Imams Rahimahullah Ta'ala, when they approach the timeline of Medina, they approach it with a timeline of war. That's usually what they're going to use as the standard to understand what happens in each and every single year. Because Medina is certainly war. Ibn Sayyid Anas, rahimahullah ta'ala, he wants to speak about the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam sanctioning 85 different military engagements. And you understand that Medina bil ittifaq is a 10-year period. You're averaging like 8.5 wars per year being sanctioned by the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Remember, it's an age where the Sahaba themselves symbolically sleep with their swords. In the same bed, they sleep with their sword, they sleep armed. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum wa ardahum. And they said they were not able to place down those swords to the age of Umar ibn Khattab. After the flight of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to the Barzakh. That's when they could put their swords aside. And they said it wasn't to the age of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu wa ardahum, you had to sleep without swords again. Okay? And so then the swords of Sahaba radiallahu anhu wa ardahum, indicative of danger and indicative of a threat of life. Radiallahu anhum wa ardahum. Hakada the age of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. The age. Likewise also, the third of the themes also, the themes, the tripartite theme is the theme of relationships of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And often when you speak of the relationships of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, you're speaking about it primarily with his women. And with his women folk. And the word for your women folk in the Arabic language, ahl. Ahl. That same term, ahl, is family. Ahl is nuclear extended family. So it's a comprehensive term. And so you can understand the person in terms of their relationships with toward the broader family and in the form of their relationship with their own wives. And so here the Imams, rahimahullah ta'ala, they note that Medina is an age of marriage of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Whenever we speak about the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, inside of a polygynous relationship sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and I mean a consummated polygynous relationship. When he consummates his marriage sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it's exclusively Medina. It's only Medina. It's not Mecca. Mecca, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is in what you call radical monogamy. Radical. But the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was only married to one woman, Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha wa ardaha. After the death of Khadija, he married Sayyidina Sauda. One. And he consummates with Sauda. Same month apart, he married Sayyidina Aisha, but he does not consummate Aisha. Aisha consummated in Medina to Munawwara. So for the entire period of Mecca to Mukarramah, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam is only engaging a woman in singularity, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, whereas Medina differs. And it differs radically. If you want to sort of take, quote unquote, the opinions of the Imams, rahimahullah ta'ala, that the Rasul, I'm averaging out, and the Rasul sallallahu can be marrying a woman a year inside of Medina. A woman, another woman, each and every single year inside of Medina Munawwara. You could average it that way. That bil ittifaq, by consensus. Now, if you want to sort of go beyond the consensus to the next understanding, then the Rasul sallallahu on average is marrying 2 women a year. And if you want to go beyond that even to what Ibn Sayyid Anas brings in his work, the Rasul's marrying 3 a year. Okay? Themes of 3. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But that's all Medina. That's Medina. Not Mecca. It's not Mecca. And in Mecca, very, very different. It's as if the dangers of Mecca does not allow the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to think about, quote, unquote, women and relationships with women. You know, Mecca, the ultimate reality of Mecca is about your relationship with God, and your relationship with the messenger of God, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And that the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam makes crystal clear inside of what? Inside of Mecca to Mukarramah. Okay? Tayyib, the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala, chapter 6, he wants to look at the battles of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Remember, the term he uses, maghazi, the maghazi of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, after you hear the term ghazwa. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he has 2 types of battles. Okay, types of battles. There's a battle sallallahu alayhi wa sallam where he stands physically on the battlefield. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and there's a battle where he does not stand physically on the battlefield, rather he dispatches his companions to engage the enemy. If the Rasul is physically on the battlefield, you call that a ghazwa, a maghazi. When he's physically on the battlefield himself, if the Rasul is not on the battlefield, the term that is ordinarily used is a sariyah. It's called a sariyah. Although the Imam Rahimahullah Ta'ala uses the word ab'ath, plural ba'uth. He's using a different term. Ibn Sayyidina inside of his way. But what the convention is upon the term ghazwa for the physical presence of the Rasul sallallahu sariyah for the spiritual presence of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, dispatching his companions sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. As we said, the ulama rahimahullah ta'ala are between 49 and 85. Okay, and usually what's ordinarily stated, 49 sallallahu alayhi wa sallam military engagements, where Ibn Sayyidina is going to quote unquote nearly double that figure. Radiallahu anhu warḍah. And it's not just a figure he plucks out of his head, but he's going to name every single one of them, every single engagement of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam inside of his major work, radiallahu anhu warḍah. He first begins with the maghazi of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the battles of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is not going to physically stand on the battlefield and engage the enemy to the second year of Medina to Munawwara. Obviously, the first real major engagement of the Prophet ﷺ is Badr in and of itself. And I mean, engagement with his quote-unquote engagement, it is an exchange of fire. That's Badr of the Rasul ﷺ. Although the battles of the Rasul, the Sariyat, they begin quote-unquote way before that. In the first year, straight after Hijrah, then you're going to be led by Sayyidina Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, who, his strongest opinion, he is why he's the first one to engage in battle on behalf of the Rasul ﷺ in the Sariyat. But he leads, he's the first one to have the standard, and he leads a group of companions against enemies from amongst the Quraysh. And then the second of them is Sayyidina Ubaydah. Yeah, Al-Muttalibi is going to be the second of them to carry the flag on behalf of the Prophet ﷺ. The Imam Rahimahullah Ta'ala is where during this period of time, the Messenger of God ﷺ waged war on 25 separate occasions, or according to some 27. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And that they're being strong at 27 occasions. Every other tradition you look at, it's partial knowledge on behalf of certain Sahaba. Like Sayyidina Barra radiallahu anhu wa can speak about the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam being in 18 battles or what have you. You find tradition sahih. But the Imams rahimahullah ta'ala, it's only a partial knowledge that those companions have of the overall engagement that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam himself stood upon. Remember the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam al-harbu khid'a. And he sees of his famous word, al-harbu khid'a, and war is stratagem. And the stratagem of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, even amongst the Sahaba themselves. A Sahabi definitely does not know ordinarily where the Rasul is going. They don't know who their aim is, where the Rasul is heading out to. And they're in the army. Hakada the Rasul, the covert nature of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam inside of war. And likewise, also what can be the case is they may not even know that an army is emerging from Medina to Munawwara. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam can select sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which helps us understand why certain companions may not have had knowledge of the total amount of battles that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam engaged in or sanctioned sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala says 25 on 25 separate occasions, or according to some 27, that being the strongest. The Imam is going to mention more than that. But he only sallallahu alayhi wa sallam engaged in actual battle in 7 of them. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, namely Badr, Uhud, Khandaq, Banu Qurayza, Banu Mustaliq, Khaybar, Hunayn, as well as Ta'if. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Some of them have 8, some of them have 9 that was ever any actual physical engagement. And once again, if you look at Ibn Sayyidina's quote-unquote mathematics, the Rasul sanctioned in 85, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and show off, you have how many engagements do you have, physical engagements of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, then you understand something about the nature of war with the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That war, it's about the resolution of conflict. It's conflict resolution. It's not about conflict. It's about conflict resolution. How is war averted? And how is disbelief averted on the face of the earth without moving into states of conflict? That's the nature of what prophetic was of the Rasul himself sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. If you look in the hadith inside of Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim, where the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, utitu khamsin, I was given 5 things. In the riwayah, utitu sittin, I was given 6 things, ma'uti li nabiyyuna min qabli, that was not given to any prophet prior to me. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said. Of the things that Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned, ru'ab, he said, nusirtu bil ru'ab masirat shahr, I was granted victory through ru'ab, and for a month's journey, the Prophet ﷺ. What's ru'b? Fear. Fear. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cast, quote unquote, into the hearts of those who could contradict the fear of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam as a means of abasing them. Because when you're speaking with a warrior people, and the warrior people, quote unquote, who are not going to show up on the battlefield with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they lose face. And that's why the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in the Musnad, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, bu'ithtu bi-sayfi. Look at his words. An important word, he said, bu'ithtu bi-sayfi. I was sent with the sword. He says, bu'ithtu bi-sayfi bayna yaday sa'a. In front of me lies the hour. As the Rasul would say, ana wa sa'aka hatayni. Me and the hour like this. يسألونك عن الساعة أيان مرساها فيما أنت من ذكراها. They ask you about the hour, when will anchor itself? You are from the first signs. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam manifests, the clock of the hour is ticking down now. The mechanics of the end of time now is set, quote unquote, into motion. The manifestation of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And what the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is telling goes from his manifestation sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to the end of time, conflict will only increase until it reaches, quote unquote, its ultimate manifestation at the end of time. And the Nabi al-Malahim, and the Prophet of great wars, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, as there's not a single one of those wars that have occurred. All of those occurs, Malhamat al-Ula, Malhamat al-Thaniya, Malhamat al-Kubra, all of those end of time wars with the Mahdi and with the son of Mary, alayhim salam. And so the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, he said, bu'ithtu bi-sayfi. I've been sent with the sword, bayna yaday sa'a. In front of me lies the hour, hatta yu'bad Allahu wahdahu la sharika lah. Until Allah is worshipped alone, no partners. It's not up for negotiation. I remember they tried to negotiate in Mecca. Now, we worship Allah exclusively one year, next year, we all worship the deities. They don't want to negotiate Tawheed with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Rasul said, go put the sun in my right hand. Go put the moon in my left hand. Put it. You can't put it. It's already in the right hand and the left hand. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The one as a child, he used to play with the sun, play with the moon. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The one who as a child, as in the Hadith of Halima Sa'adiyah, used to be conversed with the moon. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The one beloved the Quran by the Quran who split the moon. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The one in the Mashakil of a Tahawi, the one who raised the sun. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. What are you going to put inside of his hand that is not already inside of his hand? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. No. It's not for negotiation. هكذا الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم قل يا أيها الكافرون لا أعبدوا ما تعبدون. Disbelievers, we do not worship what you worship. هكذا, that there has to ring aloud inside of the hearts of the Muslims inside of this age. Because unfortunately, where we perceive not, we worship the deities of kufr in the modern age. You say, well, I ain't worshiping Allah, I ain't worshiping Uzzah, I ain't worshiping Manat, I ain't worshiping Hubal. Allah Ta'ala alam. There's manifestations of Allah and Al-Uzzah and Manat and Hubal and Na'ila and Isaf. There's manifestations of them inside of our age in and of itself. And unfortunately, quote unquote, we forgot, quote unquote, the themes of Mecca in relation to Tawheed, radical Tawheed, and the purity of understanding Tawheed. We've lost that and we forgot that. Maybe many of us haven't even learned that. The reality of Risala and Nubuwwah and Muhammadiyah. شوف كيف عرفت كيف أنت مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. And مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم is not the gift of articulation that you can now tell us this is how I am. Show us. And Muhammadiyah is a being, it's a reality. That's Muhammadiyah. Now Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu wardahu, the tradition, for 12 years he placed rocks in his mouth. Abu Bakr, you ain't gonna hear a vocal come out of the mouth of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. 12 years rocks inside of his mouth. But if you gaze at him, that's Muhammadiyah. He doesn't need to tell you who, say the Siddiq, radiallahu anhu wardah. Sidquhu fihi. His truthfulness, his veracity is in him, radiallahu ta'ala anhu wardah. Akada, the reality of such people, radiallahu anhum wardahum. يعني بعثت بسيفي بين يدي ساعة حتى يعبد الله وحده لا شريك له وَجُعِلَ رِزْقِ تَحْتَ ذِلِّ رُمْحِي. Look at his word. My provision is placed beneath the shade of my spear. You know, there's not a single quote unquote instrument of war save that the Rasul has it. That is the warrior prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And what we repeat is that's the warrior prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I know some of you never heard it well. That is the warrior prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And there are no apologies for that whatsoever. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Look at this word. وَجُعِلَ رِزْقِ تَحْتَ ذِلِّ رُمْحِي. That my provision has been placed beneath the shade of my spear. And he has a spear, long staff. He has a harba, short staff. He has a bow. He has sword, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He even has a ballista. Sallallahu alayhi wa. The first one to use the ballista is the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Every instrument of war you see ma'a Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Remember, he doesn't come to take life, he comes to give life. But he's well armed, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, to ensure life is given and life is protected. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. That is reality. وَكُتِبَ ذِلُّ وَالصَّغَائِرِ عَلَى مَنْ خَالَفَ أَمْرِي. And Allah Ta'ala alam the fakir, you know, days are difficult. But you know, like the fakir, I can see us all over here, but I can also see teamwork makes the dream work. I can see that, but I can see like there's something on that wall. I know that the one who placed it on that wall often wants to be reminded that teamwork makes the dream work. They want to remind themselves of something. That statement of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we should remind ourselves of. وَكُتِبَ ذِلُّ وَصَغَائِرِ عَلَى مَنْ خَالَفَ أَمْرِي. Yani, abasement and humiliation has been decreed for the one who contradicts my command. The one who contradicts my affair. You will be abased. You will be humiliated. You go against the commandment and the affair of the Rasul himself, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. We need to be reminded of that inside of this age. You know, in an age, mashallah ta'ala, when the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, the Rasul speaks about in every single generation of the Muslims, there are uduluhu. They are the udul, the upright people. And the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, he says, لا يدرهم من خالفهم. لا يدرهم من خالف أمره. That they cannot be harmed in the slightest by those who contradict them or who go against them. حتى يأتي الله بأمره. Until Allah Ta'ala brings his affair about. But the Imams rahimahullah Ta'ala said, الudul هذولا يعني قلة. They're few and far between. And in the age of approaching 2 billion Muslims, if the udul are few or far between, ما بال بالآخرين. What then do you think about the rest of the Muslim side of our day and age? Those ones are Waratha Muhammad. And so, what about us? How then are we in relation to the commandment of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam in this day and age? You know, we often remind students, you know, of a dream that Dr. Sa'id Rahman al-Labuti, rahimahullah ta'ala, once mentioned. A dream. And in his dream, he saw, quote unquote, the two armies, the Jam'an, the two armies facing off against each other upon a battlefield. Quote unquote, the army of the Muslims and Kufr on the opposite side. Now, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as he says at the end of time, the humanity will divide into fustatan. It will divide into two citadels, two camps. Look at his words, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Al-Iman la kufra fi. Faith that has no disbelief in it. Another riwayah, Al-Iman la nifaqa fi. Faith that doesn't have an iota of hypocrisy in it. Well, kufr la imana fi. Kufr khalis, yani. Disbelief that doesn't even have, quote, a strain of faith inside of it. That's how it tends towards. But the pull of kufr is strong. It's strong, yani. It's a torrent, yani. Shuf, undercurrent that is pulling believers into its ranks, stripping believers of the raiment of libas taqwa, of the garment of faith inside of our age in which we live in. Yani Allah Ta'ala alam with the claim that we follow Muhammad. Allah alam with that claim. Shuf, Allah Ta'ala alam with that claim in and of itself. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. How does he finish? You want to bring it down to make it plain, yani. How does he finish sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? The tradition in Musnad, من تشبه بقوم فهو منهم. Look, شوف how can he bring that? He makes it plain. After all of that, يعني بعت بسيفي بين يدي ساعة حتى يعبد الله وحده لا شريك له وجعل رزقي تحت ظل رمحي وكتب ذل وصغار على من خالف أمري من تشبه بقوم فهو منهم. من تشبه بقوم فهو منهم. Whoever imitates a people is of them. Look at that frightening يعني. Whoever imitates a people is of them. Well, what do you mean imitate? Look, شوف hadith al-Musnad. Let's listen to the Imam of the Musnad, Ahmed ibn Hanbal. When he quotes the hadith, he says two things. في libas wal akal. The clothes you wear, the food you eat. You big maca. He said the clothes you wear, the food you eat. That tells you whose side you on. Something as simple as that, yani. Something as simple as that. Radiallahu ta'ala anhu. That's what we're going to get when we move on, mashallah ta'ala, inside the text. Here, he's going to speak of the clothes of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He's going to speak of the food of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Things that we may deem to be somewhat insignificant, yani. But quote unquote, just like you are what you eat, you are what you wear. And unfortunately, many of us, you get our scran is the scran of kufr, isn't it? How we are. And then we make the claim. Like we make the claim. Nasrullah sallallahu alayhi wa. And so the tradition of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, look, nusirtu bil-ru'bi. I've been granted ru'b, that fear that has been cast into the heart of my enemy who contradicts me, abased by virtue of that ru'b. And then if you say, well, how does that connect to us? Look, kalam of the Rasul. You listen attentively to the word of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. With the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, تَتَدَاعَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْأُمَمِ. He said, the nations of the world, تَتَدَاعَ عَلَيْكُمْ. They're going to descend upon you. كَمَا تَتَدَاعَ الْأَكْلَةَ عَلَى قَصْعَتِهَا. In the same way, we're hungry people, they descend upon a plate of food and they ravish that dish. They just rip it apart. Yani. Got a group of hungry people, khalas, place food in front of them, watch, observe. What you're observing them do is what is now happening to the ummah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. They say to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, after he says, Antum ka-ghufa as-sayli. Look, they say to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ya Rasul, min qillatina yawma idin. How would that occur? There are only few of us upon that day that you're speaking about. There's very few. And even that statement of the Sahaba, you see the Sahaba are like grasping, they're clutching at straws here. They're grasping for meaning. Why? Because they fought with qillah. And with qillah, the Sahaba radiallahu anhu wa rada'hum a'izza. They were mighty with qillah, with very few people radiallahu anhu wa rada'hum. So now when he asks, min qillatina, that don't even make sense upon the tongue of a Sahaba. Doesn't it? Doesn't make sense. Yani. Maybe it makes sense to us, where we all think it's like shock and awe, it's all about the numbers. كم من فئة قليلة غلبت فئة كثيرة بإذن الله. How often do you see a small group of people vanquish major armies by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is not about quantity, it's about quality. Quality, it's all about quality. Not to do with quantity. As we said, we got imams rahimahullah ta'ala in the ummah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They go against the army by themselves, bare-chested. Bare-chested, we could start listing them off. Radiallahu anhu, Abu Dhar of those. Radiallahu anhu, warda. Abu Talha. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said the voice of Abu Talha is an entire army. His voice, But Abu Talha al-Ansari, radiallahu anhu, warda. Khalid Walid, rahimahullah ta'ala, he sees the Romans in their hundreds of thousands. And he tells the Sahaba, you saw wait here, I'll deal with this by myself. Khalid Walid. Abu Sufyan ibn al-Harb said, Khalid, you're good, but I don't know about that, yani. Calm down, Khalid. And then they go into a negotiation. By the end of the negotiation, he takes 29 people with him. 30 of them. 30 of them. That's the ummah you from. What type of people are those? No, they are the people of la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-ali al-azim. Tawheed. They're the people like Khalid Walid, radiallahu anhu, at Revocable. When they see Khalid Walid acting all chaotic, and he's like, Khalid, what's wrong? Like, Khalid, in the end, Khalid, his helmet's gone, he picks up his helmet. Then he brings out the hair of the Rasul. Sorry, the midst of the battle. That's them, You hear it like Khalid, he fights with the hair of the Rasul inside of his head. You want to ask, what's the sir? The secret of whom? Of Sayyidina Khalid Walid, Sayf Allah Maslool. In the Rasul, the Sayfun, yustada'u bihi. The Rasul is the Sayf. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. He has got a strand of inside of his head, radiallahu ta'ala an. Hakada Khalid. You know, the one in battle who shouts, Wa Muhammadah. And you ain't shouting Wa Muhammadah yet. You're even going to say, that sounds like bid'ah to me. They say, Wa Muhammadah. And now who are you accusing? Like say the Khalid Walid, who are you accusing? Say the Ibrahim and Rabī Jahl. Look, so them there, the Khasasina in Jahiliyyah, kuffar. Used to shout, Wa Muhammadah. Kuffar. They used to shout, Wa Muhammadah. I can't even Kathir and others bidayat how you're going to bring the tradition. You know, they defeated all the time by the Banadira, the Iraqis. Every time Sham goes to war with Iraq emerges victorious. And the Sham said, how will we ever stand victorious on the battlefield? Mushrikeen, they decide, sure, we got to go to Mecca. The center of shirk and Nabak, and we got to go to Mecca. Plead with the gods, pray to the deities to grant us victory against Iraq, against the Manadira. When they get to Mecca to Al-Mukarramah, the talk of the town is Rasulullah. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And now the conflict between kufr and faith is now taking place inside of Mecca. And all they hear is Muhammad this and Muhammad that and Muhammad this. That's all they can hear. He said, for to be so much talk to be around one man, that's got to be a special man, isn't it? Look, kuffar, you can understand, that's got to be a special man. If the entire society is revolving around one man, for better or for worse, that's got to be a special man. Why don't we take him as our shi'ar? Why don't we use him as our battle cry? So they forget the gods, they got Muhammad. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, kuffar, and they return back to the Sham. They go to war with the Manadira. They emerge victorious for the first time in history, screaming, Wa Muhammadah, Wa Muhammadah, Wa Muhammadah. What type of people is that? I mean, qillatina yawma idhin. Are we going to be few on that day, Ya Rasulullah? Bal antum kathir. No, you are great in number. Maybe the greatest number that Muslims have ever had, in like our day and age. Some of them can quote in our generation that there are more Muslims than in the entire history of Islam combined that are alive upon the face of the earth today. Sure, there has been a serious population explosion inside of the age, for whatever reason, inside of the age in which, quote unquote, we, I was going to say, unfortunately, live in. Shuf kalam, boka khutha sayr, and no substance. We're like the froth, you know, like you see froth. He didn't even say froth on an ocean. Shuf, look at this word. You're like a froth on a temporary river. Even the river has no substance. Now you see it, now you don't. The sail, actually, it's like khutha sayr. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. What's the purpose of this vision? وَلَا يُخْرِجَنَّ اللَّهُ مِنْ قُلُوبِ أَعْدَائِكُمُ الرُّعْبِ. Now that ru'b, which are the gifts of the Rasul ﷺ from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is taken out of the heart of all believers, of disbelievers, taken out of the heart. Ru'b. وَلَا يُخْرِجَنَّ اللَّهُ مِنْ قُلُوبِ أَعْدَائِكُمُ الرُّعْبِ. And look at the words of the Rasul, which is precise. He didn't say مِنْ قُلُوبِ الْكُفَّارِ مِنْ قُلُوبِ الظَّالِمِينَ الطَّاغِينَ. He said مِنْ قُلُوبِ أَعْدَائِكُمْ. The heart of your enemies. You see, they are not your friends. They're not your friends. And they could you snuggle up. You snuggle up to them, He's my best friend, Me gonna dress like them. Me gonna eat like them. Me gonna walk like them. Me gonna be them, I kind of like the matlab. That which you ultimately desire. What gone wrong, What's gone wrong with the identity of people of the Ummah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? What's gone wrong, Something gone wrong. And unless, quote unquote, we sit and we have real conversations, don't think, my man's getting a bit emotional here. I'm not getting emotional. And this, we hear kalam. This is what we hear from our teachers, If people sit in front of our teacher, Habib Umar, you will never ever get a sense of love of the kuffar from him. Belarax. Burhan what? Have you ever heard about that? How come we stuck up to the You ever heard them? Sure, our setting is not like that. As beautiful as they are, and as loving as they are, and as embracing that they are, they know who they are. Sure, really, really important, أعدائكم أنتم. They are not your friend. Yani. They are not your friend. They are not your friend. And note, they're not the friend of humanity either. And they're certainly not the friend of Allah Ta'ala. Not them. And if you're going to take friends, you'd be wise to take the type of friends God takes. أولياء الله لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Them friends, yani. They're friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, you seeking Bobby and Sally from the valley? Who are you seeking, yani? Who are you seeking? Like, who you actually want to be with? Who you actually want to be like? Nasar Allah as-salamu alayhi. Like, what's wrong with the ummah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Yani, and maybe you could give sort of an excuse for those who live in these lands. Sure, because you're a product of your environment, hard to organize an environment, maybe. But what about fi diyar al-Islam? What about inside the lands of Islam? What about those lands? What about in the most precious of all lands on the face of the earth? Sure. Friends of whom? Friends of whom? We ask Allah Ta'ala for tawfiq, yani. We've got far bigger worries than Corona. Far bigger, yani. You know, far bigger than Corona, yani. Far bigger. Allah Ta'ala, people who know the age in which we live in, you should not be worrying about Corona and COVID and 19. Worry about the 19 who are over here. Worry about those 19. You COVID-19. What about Malaika 19? What about that, yani? Like you've never quote-unquote did that. Sure, my brother got a mask on his face. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Why don't we quote-unquote get the attire? You get the point? That protects us from Naro Jahim and Malaika Jahim. And we never thought of that, yani. Never. And part of it, that's why, you know, the Fuqih say, now, we ain't ready for Medina. You know, the conversation of Medina, let's put that aside. You know, Allah, Rasulullah, Akhlaqiyah. How can I be ready for, yani? You're not ready for the majesty of Medina. And the irony, you know, Medina difficult, Mecca difficult, but beauty. Yet Medina easy, but majesty. Oh, I got to wake up the opposites of the narrative in and of itself. Like, Allah, we better realize we are Mecca, because we're not ready for quote-unquote the narrative of Medina. That there, the sir of the Imam. The Imam like just let me just put Medina aside here. Let me just sort of keep Medina on the cover here. Because Medina comes shock and all, it's gonna come shock and all many of Muslims. Nas'al Allah as-salam al-afiyah. Allah Ta'ala places upon this earth, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a definitive amount of time upon this earth. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to spend it? And that's one of the first 5 things you're going to ask Yawm al-Qiyamah. Hadith of Sahih Muslim there, isn't it? In the time, what did you do with it? You get the point? You've been robbed. You've been cheated, yani. نعمتان مقبول فيهما كثير من الناس. هكذا. There's 2 blessings that the majority of people are cheated out of. The Prophet ﷺ said, Sahha wal faragh, your health. And likewise also your time, yani. You cheated out of it. Somebody robbing that from you. Or often look how you spend your health. And look how much you spend on health. Look how you spend your time. And look how much you spend going into those idle activities inside the time. وَلَقْرَجَنَّ اللَّهُ مِنْ قُلُوبِ أَعْدَائِكُمُ الرُّعْبِ وَلَقَذِفَنَّ اللَّهُ فِي قُلُوبِ أَعْدَائِكُمُ الْوَهْنِ. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cast into your heart wahn. هكذا الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم وهن cast inside of your heart. The Sahaba now struggling now. They said, Ya Rasulullah, وما الوهن? And the Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم said, ألا تقرأ القرآن? You go to that, لا تقرأ القرآن. Don't you read the Quran? وهن على وهن. كلام قرآني. It's in the Quran. You don't know what wahn is? Go and ask your wife when she's pregnant what wahn is. You don't know what wahn is? Go and ask your wife what it was like when she gave birth. هكذا الله تعالى وهن على وهن. You got the point? Giving birth on labor. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speak about هكذا وهن. It's debilitating weakness, incapacitating weakness, yani. Incapacitating weakness. هكذا. يعني, it's not illusion of strength like some people have. We going against the kuffar here. Me come to war against the kuffar here. هكذا, like the illusion of strength. Sure, look at that. Like since when? Saying Abdullah ibn Abbas, He says that a prophet is never defeated upon the battlefield. Never. Never. Doesn't happen. Sure. You can go for all these battles. There's not a single time that Rasul experienced defeat. Impossible. Sure. Khalid Walid never experienced a defeat. So Muslim, you get it right. The Muslim going to say, well, what about Uhud? Yeah. Allah Ta'ala alam, yani. What about Uhud? They're going to say, yeah, Allah Ta'ala alam. Yeah, ahmaq, yani. Like Allah, what about Uhud? Khalid Walid never experienced a defeat. فكيف برسول الله? And what about the Messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? You know, it's one of the signs that the ummah is right. That on the battlefield they're not defeated. If they're defeated on the battlefield, there's something wrong, and grossly wrong. If they're never defeated upon the battlefield, the age is an age. Yeah, you sure it will go radically wrong on the battlefield, yani. Radically wrong. Why? People ain't lived Mecca yet. Sure, they ain't lived Mecca. Or often, never mind lived Mecca, people still in Jahiliyyah. They قبل البعثة. أكد عمر الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم. Way back. We got a lot of catching up to do. نسأل الله سلامة. This is the clam of the Rasul. Hadith Abu Dawud. Sahih yani. Hadith of Thawban. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cast into your heart wahan. ما الوهن يا رسول الله. Make it plain يا رسول الله. حب الدنيا وكراهية الموت. Love the world and hate death. And you can imagine the Sahaba. Like, what? Like, what? What? You need people gonna love the dunya? Love it. Like, inna Allah man nazala dunya mundan khalaqaha. Which you told us that Allah doesn't gaze at the dunya since He created it. Why would you believe He gazed at the dunya, ya Rasulullah? Like Sahaba now really stuck here. Hubbi dunya. That thing that you said, merely with dunya. What have I got to do with the dunya? They will love it. Ya Rasulullah. And they claim to love Allah. Same people. Ya Rasulullah. They actually claim to love you. Ya Rasulullah. Same people. Ya Rasulullah. The same people who say, Ya Rasulullah. They follow you. Them same people. Yuhibbuna dunya. So we don't get this one. Sahaba struggling now. Sahaba struggling. What else, Ya Rasulullah? Karahiyat al-maut. Maut? What? Why? What? They hate death? They don't want to die? Please, God. God, me, please, God. They're like those type of people, yani. They pray to God, not for God. They pray to God for life. Them ones. Ya Rasulullah, something wrong. Sayyidina Khalid radiallahu anhu in war. Look at him in Rome. جئتكم بأناس يحبون الموت كما تحبون الحياة. I've came to you with the people who love death in the same way you love life. That's Sahaba now. People who love death, same way you love life. If a Sahaba was on his deathbed, the other Sahaba go and congratulate him. That's the traditions. Like someone dying, they're not like, oh, don't freak out. They're like, يا بختكم يا بختكم هنيا لكم هكذا خلاص. They send a message to the barzakh through them. Yeah, you know when someone's leaving for the place, you know, like how we used to get when we were in the Tarif, someone leaving back with the West, people come and start giving me like, can you get that to so and so, get that to so and so, or to so and so. And ultimately, to the Rasul himself, you can pass this message to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. No, how can it be that غدا نلقى محبه محمد وحزبه. You know, his wife, Zainab Bilal's wife, Ahl, there, when Bilal's dying, Karab is difficulty. She's calling out how difficult this is. Bilal's like, what Karaba? What Tarab? Bilal Tarab is happiness. It's type of happiness you start shaking. Like someone get on emotional, really happy. It's like, what Taraba? What Taraba? You know that type of happiness? It's like when Sayyidina Ja'far radiallahu anhu when he's given custody of his niece there. What does Sayyidina Bilal? So Sayyidina Ja'far do? He starts dancing around the Rasul. Dancing. The circle. Sayyidina Ja'far. That Tarab right there. Ja'far ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu dancing around the Messenger of God. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So said, Astaghfirullah Ja'far. Astaghfirullah. Ja'far dancing. Subhanallah. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala said, dancing, mubah. Nawawi, Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala says, radiallahu ta'ala, I'm sure you don't know better than Nawawi. Not saying they should go start dancing now, because you're going not to dance over. Not to dance over. You're going to say, well, sure, now you're going to dance. You get the point. Then you're those kuffar partners there. After with those kuffar friends there. You go dance, yeah, sure. No. لا تربى. غدا ألقى محبة محمد بحسبه. Tomorrow I meet my beloved Muhammad and his people. You see, Muhammad and his people. And look, the beauty of that, the beauty of those words of Bilal, it is a غدا ألقى محبة محمد الأحبة. He didn't say the Prophet alone. Muhammad and وحزبه and his party and his people. The Prophet wants people. And we want to meet them as well. We want to be amongst the people of Muhammad sallallahu in the same way we want to be amongst him, with him, behind him, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Age difficult, yani. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given all of us the capacity to overcome that difficulty. Every single one of us. MashaAllah ta'ala. Just like the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam armed for war, the Rasul says was also armed you for war. You get the point? Armed you for war, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You have the most capable instruments, quote unquote, for war that have ever been, quote unquote, created. Sure. You get the point? You know, that faith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you a drop of or several drops of, allow that to grow. And let's see what happens. You know, in that faith there, which connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يقولون يعني هكذا they say سورة المنافقون, when if they enter the city ليخرجن العز منها الأذل. من العزة؟ من الأذل؟ العزة لله ولرسوله والمؤمنين. يعني Allah Ta'ala has now he's capacitated every single one of us with him subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, it's like saying Ali bin Abi Talib, the tourist there, like it's saying Abu Bakr as-Sakran, تترسنا بالله, تترسنا بالله, تترسنا بالله. What تترسنا بالله? Allah is our shield. Allah is our tourist. As the shield we use, we shield ourselves with Allah Ta'ala. One hand, but we got another shield as well. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Like saying Ali bin Abi Talib used to say that when in the thick of the battle, we shielded ourselves behind the messenger of God. That's Ali, the brave heart. Karramallahu wajhahu. هكذا we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us Jalla Jalaluhu wa ta'ala ta'adhamatuh, inshallah ta'ala, to take heed, inshallah, tabarakallah. Inshallah ta'ala we'll continue tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala, looking at some of these battles, inshallah tabarakallah. But if anyone has any questions, it's all good. Marhaba, ahlan wa sahlan, wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Min jami'an, inshallah ta'ala. Naam, Bismillah. This is the Rabī readings that normally starts at 10. Yeah, so apologies if the admin, inshallah ta'ala, have not made you aware, and the students who've regularly attended the sessions, inshallah ta'ala. Naam, but this is the Rabī readings that normally occurs at 10 o'clock, inshallah ta'ala. And so, inshallah ta'ala, we remind the administration that it should be something that they announced, inshallah ta'ala, especially to those who regularly attend, inshallah ta'ala, bless all of them. And embrace them in goodness and protection, inshallah ta'ala. And you're asking about here, Allahu Alam, and Rayhan, about biwariqikum hadha, yani always in Surah Al-Kahf. Why is it translated as a silver coin when wariq is the word for paper? Wariq is silver in the Arabic language. Fidda is silver, and wariq, if you don't like paper, it's like what you get when you say like a sheet of paper. And so likewise, silver can also be made into sheets here, sheets. And so wariq is like a silver sheet, okay? And it's used for the coin. And so that kalam, and that's fasih al-Arab, yani that's the classical language of the Arabs for wariq, yani. Inshallah ta'ala, Isam, inshallah ta'ala, the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala is going to come to the instruments of war of the Prophet ﷺ, inshallah ta'ala. So we leave that to its correct place. In your question, what was the sword's name of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, the 9 swords that the Prophet ﷺ has? Inshallah ta'ala, when we get to the inside of the work, inshallah ta'ala, it'll be made clear then. In the dream about, we didn't finish, of Dr. Sa'id Rahman al-Bhuti, when he saw the full star 10, he saw the 2 camps upon either side, the camp of Muslims and the camp of what? The disbelievers. And thereby he sees the Prophet ﷺ manifest. And the Rasul ﷺ is walking between a Safain, he's walking between the 2 armies. But the Rasul ﷺ, Dr. Sa'id, he said the Rasul ﷺ looks somewhat lost. And so then he's approached, and they say to the Prophet ﷺ, by the Muslims, they say, Ya Rasulullah, this is your army, here's your army. And then the Prophet ﷺ says, where? I can't see them. Where? I can't see them. Okay, the dream. And Dr. Sa'id was using that in the context of how distant we are from the Prophet ﷺ and his age, and how distant we are from the Prophet ﷺ and his people, and how distant we are from the Prophet ﷺ himself. And it must be said, and so the awakening, we get that awakening, must be said that those people who were around the Prophet ﷺ, if they saw us, they would not recognize us. They wouldn't recognize us. I mean, their standards were very, very different. And again, this is not just sort of like an idle talk or here, quote unquote, but it's when you study the Sahaba themselves, you see that they held themselves to a very high standard. And like saying Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, rahimahullah, Abu Dhar, in the age of Uthman and the likes, he could walk into the midst of the Sahaba and say, I'm the only one left. I mean, it's like Abu Dhar can take the Sahaba to account. You get my point? I mean, what type of standard they hold in themselves too, when they can say that, wala fakhar. And it's not like they try to boast or attribute greatness to themselves. And then people, they held themselves to an unbelievably high standard. And any deviancy from that high standard, they couldn't recognize. Like, we ain't deviated from it. We off the map, We off the map. Off the map, we're off it, نسأل الله السلامة والعافية. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq and all that. And it's not like quote unquote a cave. And we have teachers who are better than that. It's not like it's a nice thing to say. It's not like it's a painful thing to say. And the only reason stuff like that's being said, because we have to seek some type of reconciliation with the Prophet ﷺ and rectification of the self. That's the reason it's being said. That we can become better. And that our children can become better than we are. And وَحَلُّمْ مَجَرَّةً. Because this affair will be rectified. We have no doubt about the absolutely certain of what's going to occur. The only issue here is upon whose hands. That's it. That's where the negotiation lies, upon whose hands. It's like the Sahaba when they're going to battle with the Rasul ﷺ, they're trying to negotiate with the Rasul, isn't it? To go out with the Rasul, for many of them is a negotiation. You got Sahaba on their tiptoes. Trying to be taller than they actually are, you know what I mean? So the Rasul picked them. You have Sahaba crying. When they cry, I'll come here. I'm stronger than him. I'm stronger. The Rasul says, well, show it then, innit? Show it. Yeah, they show. You got to look at them. Show. No, they're telling you, Anna, Abdullah ibn Umar, Ibrahim ibn Azim, we were all turned back. But they were all turned back. Go home. No, you ain't ready. Sure. It was a negotiation for many a person to go out with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look at saying Abu Bakr ya Rasulullah, suhbah. It's a negotiation to keep the companionship of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Naam, tayyib. Naam, ameen, inshallah ta'ala. In the 25 occasion that Ibn Sayyid Nas asked him, the question is, could you explain to us the difference between the opinion of Ibn Sayyid and Nas saying 85 battles were sanctioned, but then it is also saying in the text during this time, the Messenger of Allah started wage war on 25 occasions. He's speaking about the Ghazwa, and he spoke about the Ghazwa. And when we say 85 times, Ibn Sayyid Nas doesn't mean the Rasul's on the battlefield. That is overwhelmingly the Rasul not on the battlefield. 25 or 27 occasions that the Rasul is on the battlefield. So even that's the Ghazwa. He hasn't got to the Sirriyat. When we get to the next chapter, the Sirriyat, that the Rasul is going to mention, Nahwa Khamseen. He's approximately 50. In the next chapter, we haven't got there yet. So you add your 25 or your 27 to 50, approximately, you're already in 77. And Ibn Sayyidina goes to 85 radiallahu anhu in other works. Okay, in his Minha, likewise also in his Uyun al-Athar radiallahu ta'ala anhu waradahu. And the meaning of Sariyat, a Sariya is like an expedition. And technically, it's a battle that was sanctioned by the Prophet ﷺ, but he does not go out to battle. Rather, he dispatches, like in a sense, like a sortie, okay, like a small group of companions in order to meet off the enemy. That's what you call a Sariya. A Sariya. And if what a dream to take it off somewhere else now. Ridwan Muhammad, and if two people have a dream that is 90% similar, only difference is the setting for the topic is the exact same. Even the words used in the dream, does that amplify the true nature? No doubt it amplifies the dream. Whether it reaches a point of what? Of it being a true dream, then a mu'abbir, you need an interpretator, inshallah ta'ala. But no doubt it amplifies it, and amplifies the significance. Yani. And how does one reach a state where they are joyous on their deathbed, as they say in the Bilal? In Allahu Alam, just be like Bilal, isn't it? That's what you say, be like Bilal. And that's one of the reasons the companions of the Prophet ﷺ are therefore like the Rasul ﷺ, as he's meant to have said, Ashabi kan najum bayhim iqtadaytum bihi. That my companions are like stars, and anyone you take as a guide, you're guided the right by them. And if you want the state of Bilal, be like Bilal. And be like Mawla Bilal. And who are the abdal today? Yani, Allah Ta'ala alam, like for what reason would you want to know who the abdal are? Like for what reason? So like who are the abdal today? Like we know many of Allah Ta'ala's people upon the face of the earth, and we ain't gone to sat in their presence once. And now we want to ask about those who will be on the veil ordinarily. And la Allah alam, min husn al-Islam al-mar tarkuhu ma la ya'ni. You know, when the Prophet spoke about the Abdal, 40, the 40 Abdal of Sham, you don't hear one's companion saying, Ya Rasulullah, menhum, Samihim, Ya Rasul, what are their names? Ya Rasulullah, where I go find them, Shuf, you'll find that, Shuf. And Allah Ta'ala has His people who are made manifest, they're made known. And Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has His people who remain hidden, And once, mashallah Ta'ala, when we were in Tarim, we went to the Zambal. We were in the Zambal, and the great graveyard of Ahlul Bayt inside the Tarim. And we were there with Habib Ali. So we spent most of the night there in the Zambal. And we were going from grave to grave inside of the Zambal. And Habib Ali was explaining who were the Imams of the Barzakh, whose grave we were standing on. The Dars of the Zambal, in the Zambal with Habib Ali al-Jafri. So the Faqir thereafter, we started with Habib Umar. And so asked Habib Umar a question like, Habib, subhanallah, in the Zambal, subhanallah, Habib. And so the question similar here, Habib, where are them people now on the earth? Where are they? Those who are in the Barzakh, where are their likes now up on the face of the earth? Habib just laughed. He laughed. He laughed. That's what he just laughed aloud, Habib Umar. Then when Habib Umar I now calm down a bit, because it is. He's like, because if you understand the Imams of the Zambal, you're like, where? We just want one of them, innit? Give us one faqih, give us one sakaf, give us one mihbar, give us one, are we good, yani? So, where are they? And so Habib Umar laughed. After he finished laughing, he said, Allah Ta'ala has His people. And His people are of two types in life. There are those He manifests, and there are those He keeps hidden. There was ages where the majority of Allah Ta'ala's people were manifest. Very few were hidden. We live in an age where the majority are hidden, very few are manifest. Just the age with it. But the people are still there. What then is our concern? The ones who are manifest. That's our concern. The ones who are manifest. And a sign that you're truly concerned about the ones who are hidden is your connection to the ones who are manifest. It's that, yani. In the age of the Prophet ﷺ, there are different types of Sahaba. And it's just for us, there are different types of Sahaba. There are those Sahaba who are situated around the Rasul ﷺ. Like they will cry, worship Qali Rasulillah. They will cry whenever they're a part of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They cry at night. And look, when we think about it, maybe some of us, I'm sure you must know some roughnecks in the city. But if you know roughnecks, you're really going to see a roughneck crying there. Sahaba, by the definition of the term, when they cry. And there's not been a people created who are more dangerous and violent as the Sahaba. But look at them crying for the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. But then there's a type of Sahaba, who lives at a distance from the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That's a type. Then beyond, but that's a type. But note, both, whether you're always with him or whether you're really with him, you connect to him. It's just lahum darajat and rabbihim. And it just have different degrees of Allah Ta'ala. But in that same age, you have people in that age who know of him, yet they never saw him, they were not with him. They know of him. Sure, just to make it a bit more clearer, they even believe in him. And they may even be great people from amongst them. But they live in the age of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They believe in the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but they don't connect to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam physically. Sure. Allah Ta'ala alam, consider us our best from that group. Why? I'm talking many of us, we ain't even sat with Allah Ta'ala's people. We ain't sat. Like, a lot of us, we even had the intent to sit. Like, we sit, quote unquote, on this island here, and our expectation is that they're supposed to come to us. Like that come to us, يعني. من أعلم في الأرض, البخاري, من أعلم في الأرض. But who's the most knowledgeable person upon the face of the earth? They are saying Musa alayhi salam. Musa said, I'm the most knowledgeable man on the face of the earth. Allah Ta'ala reveals, Abdi Khadar. Now it's my slave Khadar. But Moses greater than Khidr. But Moses didn't say, Ya Allah, send him to me. Ya Allah, when is he going to come and visit me? Ya Allah. He didn't say that. He said, Aina ajiduhu ya Rabb. Where will I find him, my Lord? Where will I find him? And look, Allah Ta'ala says, Majma' al-Bahrain, at the meeting of the two seas. Allah doesn't tell you what meeting of the two seas. He can tell you what two seas, what meeting of it. Sure. Did Moses go to the River Jordan? Did Moses go to Khartoum, the Sudan? Did Moses go to Anatolia, to Istanbul, the meeting, the Bosphorus there? Did Moses go to where? To Gibraltar, the strongest opinion, went to Gibraltar. But why the Imams mentioned all the others? You can understand, because he went to them all. He's looking, he's going, wherever he knows there's a Majma' al-Bahrain, Moses going there. Sure. And the one Allah Ta'ala wanted was the Rock of Gibraltar. The Rock of Gibraltar. We're saying Musa alayhi salam. Show where he goes. You ain't been the Rock of Gibraltar yet. Sure. Look at Musa. Allah, the ones who truly desire Allah Ta'ala's people, you should rihal ilayhim. You should, they're gone, they're gone. They're gone, You know, the Faqir, we remember after the beginning of this affair of Dawah and Warabi, remember, Muslims, there was a degree of, I'm gone, Marabtul Hajj, where? Gone. Where? Gone. Dr. Sa'id Rabī, who? What? Where? Gone. People gone, Nowadays, when they come to England, they're going to do a tour. You're going to do a tour. They come into our masjid. Could you please come to my house? Please? Show, what's happened there? What's happened there? Subhanallah. Ask Allah Ta'ala for tawfiq. Inshallah Ta'ala. In your previous answer, I think you said Allah Ta'ala can revoke wilayah. Could you please elaborate? So, and the wilayah that's revocable is the wilayah that's non-revocable. Clear. It's issue of the Quran, issue likewise of the Sunnah as well. Issue, there were people who came and wilayah in the Sunnah and revoke. There were people who show people, make sure you understand them. There were people who believed in the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, followed the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, embraced the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, thumma kafar. Akala. People, not Sahaba, but they believed in him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They followed in him. They learned the religion. Some of them even appointed as teachers of the Quran, teachers of the Deen. Abdullah ibn Khattal, there, shuf. Abdullah ibn Khattal came. Abdullah ibn Khattal, the beginning of his affair. And Amthal and the likes of them. Wilayah revocable. Revocable. Bal'am ibn Ba'ura, Surah Al-A'raf. Bal'am ibn Ba'ura. Bal'am ibn Ba'ura had Ismullah al-A'zam. Yeah, the supreme name of God. What type of wilayah is that? When you've got the supreme name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah ta'ala revoked that one time. Jalla jalaluhu wa ta'ala azamatuh. And so wilayah are two types. There are those, they wilayah irrevocable. They reach a point when it's irrevocable. Yani. But there is a type that, mashallah ta'ala, although you get over the initial finishing line, it ain't finished yet. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can drag you right back. And every wali fears that. Doesn't matter if he achieves irrevocable wilayah. His fear, istidraj. سنستدرجهم من حيث لا يعلمون وأملي لهم إن كيدي متين. That's their fear now. That Allah Ta'ala, from where they perceive now, Allah Ta'ala drag them right back into the abyss of kufr. Jalla jalaluhu wa ta'ala azamatuh. But this religion keeps you on your toes, yani. On your toes, you take nothing for granted. You know, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, if I had 1 foot in Jannah, I would still not feel safe from the makr of Allah Ta'ala. 1 foot in Jannah, I would still not feel safe. And we should always consider no matter what you reach in religion, you've got 1 foot in. At any point, Allah Ta'ala could revoke that. Jalla jalaluhu wa ta'ala azamatuh. Ask Allah Ta'ala for safety and security. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Anyone present have any questions, inshallah Ta'ala? The onliners, they keep me up till late at night. The onliners, Allah bless them all. MashaAllah Ta'ala.
What would you say is the biggest challenge battle that we have in this day and age?
The biggest challenge, I think we made mention of it today. I think the biggest challenge you always mention is the challenge of knowledge. That's the biggest hurdle. The biggest hurdle is the biggest hurdle of knowledge. And Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, he places that as the first hurdle. And Imam Ghazali goes further, he said, and it's almost an insurmountable hurdle. Don't think you could get it and you're over it. It's that, and the ummah of the Rasul, because if you look at what's the problem of the ummah of the Rasul, it's essentially ignorance. Ignorance of Allah Ta'ala, ignorance of the Rasul, ignorance of his way, it's ignorance. And this deen, the foundation is knowledge, and it's the foundation of knowledge. And again, knowledge, dalala ala Allah. And we said, okay, knowledge, no, I studied fiqh, no. Knowledge, dalala ala Allah. Knowledge that'll guide you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what guides you, it shows you the imperative of reaching Allah Ta'ala, it equips you, motivates you. You ain't looking back, Yari. You ain't looking back. It's knowledge, dalala ala Rasulillah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Like we look at us as Muslims, you can see people don't know God. It's evident, Yari. Because especially when you see people who do know Him. Like when you meet people who know Allah Ta'ala, now I recognize Ahlullah, the people of Allah Ta'ala. It's evident people don't know the Rasul. So it's evident, it's evident. And sometimes you only get that when you see the people who do know Him. But you see them, you're like, got it. That's why the religion, which is a human transaction, it's a human exchange. Often, we can read 1,001 books. It's not done. That you can 1,001 books and miss the point. You must see the people. Remember, it's again the early generation. They had 0 books, 0. They had no books. They had no mobile phones. They had no computers. They had no internet. None of that. They just had Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in human form. They manifest before their very eyes. You read it? And so now the religion is a human transaction. What I'm trying to say about that, we've got to see His people to know how to be His people. We have to, yani. And then they become the examples. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Look, لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. Allah Ta'ala didn't say, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي صَحِيحِ الْبُخَارِ. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي صَحِيحِ مُسْلِمٍ. That's all Allah already said there. And people are going to hold on to books like, and I read. Like, you read what? Yeah, what do you read? Like Imam Abu Hassan al-Shadri, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, I don't write books, I write men. That Nabawi Muhammad, like that. You know? Okay, our problem, and Allah, it's not up for negotiation unless it's a conversation of knowledge. You ready? But knowledge, that's the first obstacle. We've got to resolve that. Like, we have to resolve it. Again, Allah, the age the Fakir came forth with, going to study religion and what have you. Like, everybody trying to when am I going abroad and I'm going to you. Okay, now you hardly hear that conversation now. Like you hardly hear anybody speaking about going abroad to study here or going abroad to study there, or I need to study my. You hardly hear it, yani. You know, we show up like, you know, we teach quotes and what have you, and students, and Allah bless them, and they're beloved to the fakir. But like once a week is like, you know what I mean? Once a week is like, I go to class once a week, you know what I mean? MashaAllah ta'ala. Like, I can't hate once a week, yani. So the fakir, we have people who study 20 hours a day. 20 hours a day, yani. We met people like that, yani. That they made the fakir tired. Just look at them, yani. I gotta get some cape, yani. I gotta get cape, yani. So we met people like that, yani. And I'm not 20 hours a day for a year or for 3 years, for 40 years access. That's what I'm saying, yani. Like this is what their life was, yani. Their life. I'm still alive, I'll show you some of them, yani. I'll still show you them. And Allah Ta'ala protect them. We've lost that. And so there has to be a serious conversation of knowledge. But we don't mean like this sort of, you know, this academic type of knowledge that is now descended upon the Ummah of the Rasul, but knowledge for being's sake. Like how do we be? Like the knowledge of the deen of Allah Ta'ala is like, we take the student like a manual. We want a manual of how do I be. That's all I want. Show that's the manual, just show me how I be, how I connect to Allah Ta'ala, how I be like Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, how I be that positive force that walks amongst humanity and guides them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how I be khayrukum idha ru'i dhukir Allah, how do I be of those that when I'm seen, Allah is remembered. The Rasul mentioned it for the reason sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that type of knowledge. Yani. Allahu a'lam, the issues that faces inside of this day. Yani. Any questions, inshallah ta'ala? Any questions? I find sometimes that I read or hear a hadith regarding the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and filled with hope and certainty of being saved by him. And other times I read or hear other hadith and find myself question my chances due to many deficiencies and reflection of my poor spiritual state. How do I strike a balance between the two states? Allah ta'ala, it seems to be a degree of balance in what you're saying, between khawf and raja, between hope and fear there, inshallah ta'ala. So Allah and the Faqih would say, if you're experiencing that, mashallah ta'ala, that is a good thing to experience, inshallah ta'ala. It's a fourth generation and age of technology or a return to the old ways. Allah ta'ala alam. I've heard the Habaib say that modern warfare in its nature is haram. Allah ta'ala alam. Yani, it's Ja'afar from Manchester. Marhaba. We'll see you Friday probably in there. And if we're not all on lockdown, one of our uncles from London passed a few hours ago. فاتح صلى الله بعين العناية وعين الرعاية عن الحفظ وعن الأمان عن جل وكرم فاغفروا وارحموا فاغفروا مغفرة عندك وارحموا إنك أنت غفور رحيم. النسوة فوق درجات جاوزا سيجعل مسكر الروح جل فردوس الأعلى بلا سابقة عذاب ولا عتاب ولا فتنة ولا حساب أنت ولي ذلك قادر عليه. سر الفاتحة إلى حضرة النبي اللهم صل وسلم بارك عليه وعلى آله. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. آمين آمين آمين. طيب, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to continue tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala, with tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think we're in Peterborough tomorrow. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make, inshallah, our journey safe, and when we leave, likewise, he is behind in safety, inshallah ta'ala. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi.